I consider myself extremely lucky because as I was growing up, Aston Martin was building possibly the prettiest cars of all time. Vehicles like the Vantage and the DB9 that were designed by Ian Callum and Henrik Fisker, two of my favorite automotive designers of all time. Now, those vehicles were eventually replaced. There was a new Vantage and a new DB model called the DB11. And while they were pretty, they didn't have that bite the back of your hand beauty of those originals that I grew up with. Well, now the DB11 has been replaced with a new model called the DB12, and I'm happy to report that the back of my hand has teeth marks on it again. Now, I could excuse you for thinking that the 2025 DB12 is a facelift of the DB11. The two vehicles look pretty similar from far away, although we'll see that there is a lot of changes that Aston Martin made to this car, both on the inside and on the outside and under the skin as well. This vehicle is painted in a color called Podium Green. It costs almost $10,000, but it is simply gorgeous. It has kind of a tealish hue to it that really pops in the sun. I'm getting so many compliments on it. It's very similar to the color that you'll find on the Aston Martin Vantage pace car that laps around Formula One tracks after there's been an accident. So gorgeous color, really just plays into Aston Martin's racing history and its modern racing history as a current F1 team. Now, with a car like this where you can customize pretty much every aspect of it, it's easy to fall into the trap of hiding a lot of the details with black accents, but I'm glad Aston Martin didn't do that on this particular car. We've got the chrome slats here on the grille. I love this look rather than the black finish that's available because it just kind of hides the grille and makes it look invisible. I also love this new front end. I think it is a lot cleaner. It's a lot more aggressive than the DB11. It's just a gorgeous looking car here at the front. We've got 21-inch wheels standard. This is kind of a two-tone finish, black and silver. I like that they didn't just go for an all black look. This is a gorgeous looking wheel wrapped in Michelin Pilot Sport 5S tires, which are phenomenal. And we've got carbon ceramic brakes painted in yellow. It's $2,000 to paint them in yellow, but the carbon ceramics themselves are a little over $14,000. That's more than I paid for my entire first generation Boxster. So just to give you a taste of how expensive some of the options are on a vehicle like this. I mentioned that this is the Volante. You can also get the DB12 as a hardtop coupe, but I think the Volante is the way to go. I mean, look at how gorgeous this vehicle looks from the side and from the side three-quarter. It is absolutely a stunner. I've got to show you the mirrors on this car. It's something that Aston Martin has been doing with all of its latest generation cars. Instead of the glass moving within the housing of the mirror, the entire thing is going to move. So you see, when I go ahead and fold the mirror, it's going to kind of tilt up like so. Really cool looking here. So the actual whole mirror moves as you adjust it. That's something that I've never seen before on another car that is really unique. And then here at the back, I don't love that it says Aston Martin spelled out in big font. I think just the badge would do nicely, but Aston Martin and a bunch of other automakers are doing that. We have our nice dual exhaust here. We've got these smoked taillights, which are about $1,500. You can get those in red as well. And then no big spoiler, but we do have this nice kind of aero piece. The air kind of goes in there and then comes out, pushing down on the back end of this car, but keeping the tail nice and clean. Now, if you thought the exterior was gorgeous, just wait until you see the inside. We do have these pop-open door handles that are motorized, so you don't have to do all of the work yourself. And then in typical Aston Martin fashion, the door is actually going to lift upwards just a little bit. Now, there is a functional purpose for that. It's so that when you park next to a low curb, you don't scrape your beautiful door. So there is a functional purpose to that. And then we get into the actual interior, which, as I mentioned before, is simply gorgeous. We've got this nice caramel brown interior, but you can choose pretty much anything you want. You want blue leather with pink stitching. Pretty sure Aston Martin will make that for you. We've got like an upgraded stitch pattern here. I'm loving this gorgeous diamond quilting. These are heated and ventilated seats, and I love this kind of pattern here that looks like it belongs on a fancy men's dress shoe. We've got Aston Martin stitched here in the headrest, which is again a nice touch. Now, you don't actually have to get these seats. There is like a carbon fiber bucket seat, believe it it or not, available on the DB12, but I'm going to say go for this one because it is a really nice combination of comfortable, but it does have nice bolstering to hold you in place. This is what you would want on a GT car. Maybe on like a DBS Vanquish or a Vantage, maybe you would get a carbon bucket seat, but I think this is the right seat for this car. Now, the rest of the cabin is going to be covered in more of that brown leather. We've got brown leather here on the steering wheel, brown leather here on the dash, brown leather all the way up on the A-pillars and even on the sun visors. Tons of brown leather. The only reprieve that you get from the brown leather is going to be this kind of terrible gloss black here on the door. I'm 99% positive that the Aston Martin configurator has an option to replace this with something else. Imagine a big, gorgeous piece of unlacquered wood. I think that would be absolutely gorgeous here on the door, breaking up kind of all of the leather that you get. We do have a nice grab handle here and some storage in here. Aston Martin is definitely improving kind of the everyday livability of this car, which I'll show you more as we get here on the inside. Now, the start button lives right here on the dash. It's no longer a push button shifter as we used to have in the DB11, and we also no longer have that terrible tacked on old Mercedes command unit that was just so bad. Instead of that old school Mercedes rotating knob, we now have a touchscreen. It is super responsive, wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. You can have your telemetry up here as well. It is very simple and easy to use. I like this screen. If I had one complaint with it, it does get a little bit of glare, and then these air vents do get quite a little bit frosty because they are metal. Condensation goes over them a little bit, and then that is very close to your screen, but that just means that these air vents are of a nice quality as well. And then I like the fact that Aston Martin didn't just put everything on this touchscreen. We do have some buttons down here, lock and unlock. We have some air conditioning controls as well. We've got these gorgeous knobs. These are one of my favorite parts of the control. We have temperature on either side. We've got the fan over here, just a single fan, not a dual fan. And then we have a volume scroller as well. These things feel absolutely gorgeous. They have such a nice tactile feel as you scroll them. Around the engine stop start, we have our drive mode selector. This is even more tactile. It just does such a nice detent as you twist it. So you can switch it from GT to Sport and Sport Plus. I love that there's not an overwhelming number of drive modes. You do also get a personal mode that you can customize as well, but I love that there is a quick and easy way to grab that. I mentioned no more push button shifter. Instead, we have a very Porsche 911 style little nubby here. Push it forward for reverse. You get a really nice 360-degree camera. You may say you don't really need that in a small car like this, but it does have a pretty long and low hood. And when you have something this expensive, you want to make sure that you're not accidentally curbing a wheel if you do need to parallel park it. Drive is going to be down, and then you have push button for park. Aston Martin has done away mostly with the touch capacitive controls that you used to get on the DB11. The only remnants of that are the heated and ventilated seats. You just touch these and you get a little sound effect letting you know that you activated them. That's it. The rest are actual solid buttons. I will count that as a win. And we do have plenty of solid buttons here. Traction control here, exhaust, loud or quiet. We can adjust our suspension independent of those drive modes that I showed you. This is going to be your comfort mode. It's going to light up in orange for sport mode and then red for sport plus mode. Auto stop defeat. I love this button because in a sports car like this, you don't want your engine shutting off at the lights. You can turn the whole infotainment system off. You have your lane keep assist off. This is one area where big difference from the DB11. We've got a lot of driver assistance technology here. It works pretty well, almost too well to a point. To turn it off, you actually have to click this button. Then it's going to pull up this mode, this screen over here on the touchscreen. Then you have to click no assistance to turn it off. And then you have to tell it to deactivate. It's one too many steps to turn that off for me because I've noticed the lane keep assist is a bit aggressive. It kind of pulls me back into the lane and I'm like, no, I'm in the lane just fine. So one too many steps for that. But again, I'm nitpicking here. All of this is so much better than it was in the DB11. I really can't complain too much on that regard. We do have a very quiet cabin in here. We've got 11 speakers standard on this car, but we've got the optional 15 speaker Bowers and Wilkins audio system. It costs $10,000, which is kind of ridiculous for a premium audio system, but I will say I have bump to the music in this car, and it sounds absolutely fantastic even with the roof down. It really overpowers the wind in a really nice way, so I would probably opt for that if I were getting one of these cars. I mentioned that the practicality has improved with the storage in the doors. We do actually get a glove box. It's a very small one. It really only holds like an owner's manual and not much else, but we didn't have a glove box on the DB11, so that's an improvement. We have some decent cup holders that hold a nice amount of space. They have a little cover here as well, and then Aston Martin got rid of it used to have a little button with like a motorized slider. Instead, you just have a normal lid that you lift up. You can charge your phone with USB-C ports down there, so that's nice and practical. And then we do have a little bit of storage underneath here with a wireless charger down there because, of course, this is an electronic shifter and not connected to anything. We do also have some really nice steering wheel controls, very similar to what you used to get on a Mercedes product. You can kind of just swipe to control the information that's here in the middle. You can also customize these gauges as well under view. So right now I have the tachometer and the speedometer separate, but you can actually merge them into one kind of central unit, and that now you get two different displays that you can customize instead of just the one. And then you may notice that the paddle shifters are now connected to the wheel instead of the column. I typically prefer column mounted paddle shifters, but if you're going to do them on the wheel, Aston Martin did them right. They're really big, really nice and clicky, and as you'll see when we get out on the road, I really enjoy using them. And I think last but not least, I should mention the top. I don't love that this roof liner is a little bit of a very different color, in fact, than this brown, but it is a really nice suede. It feels very expensive and premium. It has 8 layers, so it is really quiet when you get it out on the road. It's very easy. So all you do is hold that down. The roof is going to go back pretty easily. It's going to go down and up in about 14 to 16 seconds at speeds of up to 31 miles an hour, giving you open top driving pleasure. And I don't want to waste too much time talking about the back seat because it might as well not even be there, but you just pull this leather strap. The seat motor is going to go forward as much as it can do, allowing you to get into the back seat here. Now, this seat back can be finished with like wood or carbon fiber or whatever. They just sent me kind of the bare leather, which still looks really nice, but I would have liked to have seen the wood or whatever other material there on the back. And as I come and sit in here, I honestly can't even tilt the seat all the way back before it hits my knees. So this is pretty much useless. You could maybe put a small dog or a bag back here. That's about it. And it's not just the kids that you're probably going to have to leave at home when you take the DB12 out. You'll probably have to travel kind of light because you only get 6 cubic feet of cargo space with the roof down. You can raise this partition to get a little over 7 cubic feet, but that is less than the coupe, which has over 9 cubic feet of space. And if you're looking for an Aston Martin that can haul stuff, obviously you have the DBX, which is an SUV, but the Vantage is actually the superior cargo hauler because it has, at least in coupe form, a kind of hatchback that goes really long, like into the cabin, so you could fit some much bigger items in it. So although it doesn't have a back seat, I think the Vantage is actually the more practical option if you're trying to carry a lot of stuff in your Aston Martin sports car. Now, before we get this car out on the road, I want to talk to you about what's under the hood, because under the hood of the DB12, you might expect to find a V12. It's kind of an Aston Martin signature thing, but no. Unlike the DB11, which was available as a V8 and as a V12, the DB12 is only available as a V8, a 4-liter twin-turbo unit sourced from Mercedes-AMG. But it is a huge upgrade. It makes 671 horsepower and 590 pound-feet of torque. This is a handmade engine. You can see that it is hand-built in Great Britain with final inspection by Kieran Coffey, of all people. Kieran, you did a lovely job with this engine. It is phenomenal. To put that into perspective for you, the DB11 V8 only made 528 horsepower, and the V12 only made 630 horsepower. So this is 41 horsepower more than the old V12, and it's not far off of the old DBS Superleggera, which had 715 horsepower. So this thing is an absolute brute. The one thing I'll say is I do miss the DB11 had a reverse clamshell hood, which was just such a unique, cool, exotic feature. I do wish that Aston Martin would have kept that here for the DB12 instead of a standard front opening hood. It's now time for the best part of the review, where we get out on the road with the Aston Martin DB12 Volante, and we're going to first find out what 671 horsepower feels like getting off the line. Aston Martins aren't like the quickest cars from 0 to 60. They don't have all-wheel drive. They don't have a dual clutch transmission, but Aston Martin says 3.6 seconds to 60 in the Volante, just a tenth slower than the DB12 Coupe. Let's put that to the test. Foot on the brake, race start active, and here we go. That's a smooth launch. Wow, that was seamless. And we definitely beat Aston Martin's claim, 3.47 seconds to 60. That's even quicker than they said the Coupe would do. So definitely believe that 0 to 60 time. Now, I mentioned that this twin turbo V8 with 671 horsepower is more powerful than even the old V12 powered DB11, which only made 630 horsepower. Do I miss the sound of the V12? Not really. This AMG sourced V8 might be German, but Aston Martin gives it its own unique personality. They've been doing this for several years now, whether it be in the Vantage or in the DBX. I believe it has a lot to do with the exhaust. There's probably some very different tuning that Aston Martin does to this engine as well. And the transmission is different than Mercedes typically uses on its vehicles. And that creates, combined with obviously all of the other stuff, a very different experience than what you would get from something like a Mercedes-Benz SL or an AMG GT Coupe. Now, the AMG version of this engine that's in the Mercedes definitely gives a lot of throat, a lot of bark, but I think there's just something a little deeper, a little more raspy, a little more natural here. And I'm loving the tuning on this ZF 8-speed automatic. Aston Martin nailed it with the tuning of this transmission. It functions so well in day-to-day traffic, like absolutely flawless. It's why the ZF 8-speed has such a good reputation around the industry. But when you pop it in Sport Plus mode, put it in manual, and use the paddles, oh, it just rips those shifts. Burbles on the downshift sometimes, but it doesn't do it every time. It's not formulaic. It makes you feel like each gear change is going to be a little bit different, a little bit more special, and you got to nail it just right to get exactly what you want out of that exhaust. Oh, it sounds so good, and I'm loving the fact that we have the Volante, so you just get to hear that noise even better. Now, at this point, I should mention that we have intelligent adaptive dampers that are really nice on this car. It's a firmer ride than something like a Bentley Continental GT, which is a little bit more cloud-like, but even in Sport Plus right now, I'm definitely not getting beat up in this car. This is definitely a car that you could take on a long journey, although for a long journey, I would like a massage seat. Aston Martin, please add that as an available feature. But then I've got to talk to you about the non-isolated steering. Aston Martin was quick to point this out in the press release, and I didn't really know how it would feel from behind the wheel, and it's lovely. It has such a nice connection to the road. It's very light. There's not too much steering effort, but when you do chuck this thing through a corner, you really just feel like you could pinpoint it as you're going. It doesn't feel artificial. Something like the Continental GT is this big, bulking hulk of a car, and you're impressed that it's able to do the things that it can do because it's kind of bending physics around itself. But with the DB12, everything feels just a little bit more natural. You feel like you're in a svelte, classic British Grand Tourer, and everything just kind of naturally works. We do have carbon ceramic brakes. I mentioned those on the outside. $14,000, but oh my gosh, they work extremely well. And then you get going again. Oh, I just can't get enough of this engine and transmission combination. And then we do also have an E rear differential instead of like a mechanical one. It's an electronic locking rear differential. This is the first DB Aston Martin to get one of those. I think it does a great job. You can control this car on throttle. I love that Aston Martin didn't fall into the trap of making this all-wheel drive, although that might have maybe made it a better all-weather convertible. something like the Bentley Continental GT. Sorry for how many times I'm mentioning that vehicle, but it is probably the closest comparison. That and something like the Mercedes AMG SL, also all-wheel drive. But they've also done a lot more to the structure of this car. When you cut the roof off of a car, you lose structural rigidity. But Aston Martin was way ahead of that with the DB12. They have new rear suspension mounting points. They have an engine cross brace. All of this adds more torsional stiffness in the rear by about 5%. The lateral stiffness on the front axle is like 140% stiffer. This is compared to the DB11. So these are really big improvements. So if you ask me whether or not cutting the roof off has affected the balance and poise of this car, I'll tell you, you're being ridiculous. You can maybe feel a little bit of chassis flex, but I love the fact that this is not the sports car of the segment. This is the Super GT, as they call it. It is meant to be able to do a back road like the one I'm on, but I get a little bit of chassis flex, I get a little bit of roll, but I feel it all through my butt and through the wheel. If you want the kind of track rat experience, the stiffer, more hardcore experience, that's why they still make the Vantage. The Vantage is the baby of the range. The sports car, it's a little bit stiffer, it's a little bit more rowdy. This is calm, collected, cool. If I switch it to GT mode, now it quiets down. I just get a low growl from the engine, not that crazy British, look at me bark. And the steering lightens up just a little bit, but it still feels oh so natural, and I can just enjoy some top-down motoring. This is a really complete car, more complete than the DB11 or even the DBS Superleggera ever were. I liked those cars a lot. I loved driving them, and I could forgive their flaws in their entertainment, in their practicality, because they drove so well. Now, with the DB12, you get all of that good stuff enhanced, and you no longer have to make excuses for it. That's going to wrap up our time with the 2025 Aston Martin DB12 Volante. Pricing for this car starts at $265,000. The coupe is $249,000 if you want to save yourself some money, but I personally think that the DB cars are best as convertibles. If you want a coupe, I think you should go for the cheaper Vantage. Now, the car that I showed you has a ton of options on the interior. The carbon ceramic brakes are $14,000, so the total cost of this one is nearly $330,000. There are plenty of GTs that you can get for similar or less money. You could get a Mercedes AMG SL, you could get a Lexus LC500, but neither of those has the prestige and the overall fit and finish of an Aston Martin. I would say that this is just in kind of a different league from those cars in terms of curb appeal, and if you have the money, I really would spring for the Aston Martin if I could. And the improvements to the DB12 over the DB11 are absolutely enormous. Just the infotainment alone makes this car so much easier to drive on a day-to-day basis. Wireless Apple CarPlay, an amazing stereo, and it's just so comfortable to drive every day. Of course, it does have some practicality limitations, but that is why Aston Martin also sells an SUV, the DBX707, which I also love. Let me know in the comments, do you like the improvements that Aston made to the DB12? Would you buy this over something like an AMG SL, a Bentley Continental GT, or even a Porsche 911 for the added money? I want to hear from you, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to be alerted of our latest videos. I'll see you next time.